Hi guys, how you doing? I was just chilling out with my favorite band's music. You know them? The Libertines? If you don't, check them out. Anyway, today I want to talk to you about the exhibition called Inspiration that after the cycles of May and June, this month will complete its path and will be hosted by M.A.D. Gallery in Milan. It will be a complete and complex exhibition, and all the artists who will take part in it will cover all the different types of media and will face the delicate theme of artistic inspirations and influences that populate their artworks. The first one is Al, a French photographer that produces photographs with a dreamlike tone. She prefers chiaroscuro technique to represent reality as a game of opposites. The thin line between absence and presence comes to life to tell us about human beings that, despite they having known pain, they are still able to hope. Women are recurring characters in her works, even though they are never full-length represented. In fact, the viewer can catch only few parts of a feminine body. Her shots can reproduce the speed of reality, impossible to capture, even though made with a delicacy that sometimes only a feminine body can represent. Inspiration exists, but it has to find you at work. This is Alberto Rodriguez Miguel's thought line that traces the footsteps of Pollock's action painting and dripping technique. He relates geometricism and vivid shades to capture the color stains on canvas with his colorful webs. The two-dimensionality of the media is opposed to the plasticity of the elements applied on it. The whiteness of canvas lives in opposition to the brilliance of the colors chosen by the artist that represent an unconventional word and conceptual word which is worth it to penetrate. The next one is Alina Koziol. The self-portrait is the preferred technique to analyze the human expressions and their meanings. The plants in the foreground are carefully sewn by the Siberian artist, element that emphasizes the care that she has towards her works. The gaze escapes the observers as concentrated in the search of herself. The contact with nature is underlined by the plants in the foreground and the strands of hair connected with them. The Alina Koziol portrait seems to reconnect with the symbolist painting of Frida Kahlo in a continuum from the 50s brought to the contemporary period. Rework photographs, geometry, recurring antagonisms between light and shade. The dark atmospheres dominate the Alex T works, creating unexpected scenarios and science fiction atmospheres. The artistic research is the investigation of subtle balances that govern a world without certains, no fixed and reliable reference points. Even the most precise and static elements can be modified to create new form, to unexplored possibilities of observation. Artistic expression becomes the new center of gravity from which to start to make sense of the world around us. In Almo's works, myth and innovation come together and blend to create scenes from the strong dynamicity conveyed by a careful choice of colors. The Calabrian artist uses his pictorial maestry to give new life to Greek classicism, populating his works with iconic figures, powerful, statuesque, but almost absorbed. Curved and straight lines meet and clash in the background, creating perspective effects that lend movement to the paintings. The viewer is introduced into a reality of an ancient tradition with a modern twist, a successful artistic gamble that pays tribute to the founding text of Western culture. Arlette de Lavallee combines her love for the visual art with which for theater, choreography, and costume design. The common point of her works is the management and preparation of the visual space, the attention of the yield of lights, and the choice of fluorescent colors to create vivid and vital scenes, bearers of important and symbolic messages. The works put the viewer in front of the vices that afflict human beings, such as anger or envy, hoping for the recovery of the values that could heal humanity. Regarding to the artistic inspiration, the tone selection brings us to the expressionist school, while the figures are based on the dictates of the abstractionist and symbolist school. Daniel Bert reproduces in his works his most dear views coming from his homeland, France. The tones widely change from the most subtle of the full moonlight night to those that reproduce fiery sunsets with a great visual power. The brush strokes are clear, thick, and reflect the ardent passion that the artist feels for his works. His production is linked to the studies of the Impressionism school, whose teachings are revisited in a modern and not banal way. Fleeting reality constantly escapes from our hands, but a sensitive and conscious painterly technique can imprint it forever on the canvas. Archer is a British artist who chooses Venetian blue as name for her alter ego. The woman is usually painted in blue and dressed with carnival gowns preciously decorated. The favorite ambients are the romantic canals of Venice, leading the viewer into a scenario suspended in time to a point of contact between reality and the intimate and fascinating world of the artist. The contours and precise shades of Venetian blue contrast to traits, sometimes barely mentioned, of the architecture in the background to create a surreal and dreamlike scene. Belloni is an Italian photographer that decides to completely avoid the use of editing, entrusting himself to the attention to details and to the research of the perfect light. The examined landscapes are almost always isolated, out of time and space. In these cases, the human figure is absent, but the traces of its passage are often clearly visible. Numerous shots cover the topic of madness through the choice of asylums as set, or through girls immortalized with clothes and makeup that refer to the mentioned issues. It is the representation of the presence of an absence. In Garulf's works, as known as Mario Cianferoni, digital art gets out of the way between canvases and brushes, replaced by technological aids such as computer or tablets. Garulf's works have plexiglass or canvas as media, even if in the first case they present a further brilliance and depth. The symbolic figures are shown with bright colors pop and consist in essential strokes, sometimes fluid and sometimes more rigid, coming to remind of expressionist paintings. Man fragility, desire of freedom, and evasion voltage come to life in the new high-tech dimension immersed in a fluid and surreal atmosphere. Jason Adam Brown is a British artist, and in his works, the restatement of photographs is functional to convey the message in them contained. What is normal? Where is the thin line between sanity and insanity? The mental health issue is thoroughly investigated, and the artist's research explores man's deepest feelings, often links to sadness and longing. The achromaticity of his shots gives them suspense and gloom. The almost cubist digital changes seem spirals that leads us into the artist's inner world, a world in which man is surrounded by opposites, by lights and shades, mainly coming from his interiority. Jane Gottlieb is an American artist who decides to intervene directly on her photographic archive with the use of Photoshop. The artist distorts natural colors using a palette of saturated, unreal, and fluorescent tints. The subject changes considerably. Urban landscapes, details of cars, architectures, almost an anthem for everything that man had been able to build. Humans, when present, do not look towards the viewer, but they turn their back, inviting him to immerse in a psychedelic world. Printing on aluminium gives an appearance of more brilliant scenes that, with a suspension of time, seem to recreate the views of Hopper, combined with tones closer to pop art. Kathleen Cameron is an Australian conceptual artist who uses photography as her favorite medium. At first sight, Cameron's photographs are difficult to understand, full of symbolic elements and intimistic recalls. The human figure is barely recognizable, hybridized with forms of fantastic creatures. The artist's aim is to instill in the viewer feelings of deep spirituality, reachable through the investigation of the surreal and deeply conceptual atmosphere, almost creepy, inhabited by mystics but peaceful beings. Hey guys, we are in the middle of our artist list. I'm actually tired listening to my voice, and I guess you are as well. So you fancy break? I'll let you listen a bit of one of my favorite songs. It's called Don't Look Back into the Sun by The Libertines.
Don't look back into the sun. Now you know that the time is come, and they said it would never come for you.
You like it?
Oh my friend, you haven't changed.
I have to stop it, because of copyright reasons. Okay, let's go back to our artist list. The next one is Levia Moncrief Callai. She's British by birth, but she soon moved to Canada. The expressive power of her works is entirely entrusted in the choice of colors and in the brush strokes drawn on canvas. We can notice the absence of the drawing, and the representation can run free on the medium with dense strokes. The great artistic sensitivity opens the road to the investigation of the human emotions that the viewer can grasp, immersing himself in the eyes of the portrayed characters. Her technique sometimes recalls the expressionist school, while some paintings seem to recollect themselves to the cubist teaching of the early 20th century, set in a contemporary and visionary context. Hi guys! As you may have noticed, we've changed location. In fact, I'm back in my hometown, Genova, because I escaped from Milan. It was actually too hot. But I'm ready to talk you about the next artist, Luis Felipe Rodrigues. The Portuguese artist chooses to work with chalk on black paper to make further tribute to his decorative work. The contours are precise, net, and drawn with a single and continuously stroke. Within the figure branches off a series of geometricism of incredible precision to create the sinuous and elegant elements. Curved and straight lines alternate and chase each other to give almost hypnotic movement to the two-dimensional drawing. A maze of twists, a succession of crosses in which for the viewer it's impossible to avoid getting lost with his eyes. Patricia Zoller is a German artist who works as freelance since 2014. Her motto is painting, passion, spell. She compares herself with the use of different materials, constantly choosing bright and strong colors, armed with the dense and material strokes. Her painting hardly ever shown well-defined forms, only barely recognizable and explicable to the dictates of the Neo-German Expressionist school. She chooses to let the viewer free to enter in an uncertain atmosphere, in amazing environments where each one of us is free to use his own imagination. Patrizia Zoller's work is vivid and abstract at the same time, by sketchy outlines, where getting lost is the first rule. Abitar is a Syrian artist by birth, but currently residing in US. Art is a passion that accompanies her since childhood, and after moving to America, it becomes a real profession. She uses different types of media, all united by a recurring and founding idea. Nada thinks that the color is the most important element, central force of her word and sensibility. Her works are abstract, and the human and the natural spheres are placed in close contact with the main aim to instill in the viewer feelings of positivity, joy, and universal love. Rikkeline Andreasen is a Danish artist who mainly works with oil on canvas, but who also experiments the use of acrylic. The careful observation of the world that surrounds her becomes her main source of artistic inspiration, where everyday life has a role of primary importance. She is able to treat current and challenging issues with a very sweet and quiet touch, creating an unexpected and very pleasant game of opposites to the viewer's eye. Ecology is a very dear subject to the artist who, through her works, wants to stress on the delicate issue of environmental pollution, supporting the animal world against the artificial and contaminated one made by man. Sandro Frinolli is an Italian photographer who follows an introspective research where landscapes turn into fairy tale and dreamlike dimension. Photo editing becomes a vehicle to allow the viewer to immerse himself in familiar scenarios but transformed and also unrecognizable. Reaching closer to pictorialism, the shapes become emotions, and nature becomes a magical location which at times recalls the composition of Vincent van Gogh. The informal views open the way to poetic compositions in which reality is distorted and equipped with new perspectives. Sigmund Nieberg is a Norwegian artist who loves to experiment different techniques and media, and his works have a perfectly calibrated and coherent use of colors. The alternation of light and shadows is a recurring element. And from the background suddenly emerge flash of lights which give the work a great visual power. His language is mainly abstract, and sometimes it's very close to the expressionist one, but not without the presence of recognizable human figures. However, they are hardly mentioned in the outlines, familiar but faded, set in urban context but difficult to recognize. Stefano Carantini is an Italian artist who mainly works with acrylic on canvas. Looking at his works is immediate the recall of the school of neoplasticism of Piemondrian and to the abstract expressionism one. The artist puts the choice and the careful arrangement of the colors at the center of his production, creating then graffiti directly scratched onto the canvas. The derived geometric figures divide the artistic support in portions, often with opposing shades, creating strong but extremely balanced divisions, even if not strictly defined. True perfection has to be imperfect. The shots of the Spanish photographer Tana meet and merge two distinct universes, dance and photography. After having set up her sets and loading them with a strong poetic aura, she dances in the midst while the camera captures and impresses the dance moments. The artist becomes the protagonist of her works, sometimes replaced by other models. The movement is impressed on photographic paper, keeping a strong dynamism and extreme delicacy, accompanied by a sense of suspended time that creates a strong and emotional impact. Is an Ecuadorian artist who has an unscrupulous vision of art. In his works, fundamental elements of Western pop culture, such as the iconic Beatles, meets the dictates of pop art, animated by bright and thick colors characterized by overlapping strokes. Shades are surreal and seem to recall the palette used by German Expressionism from the early 20th century and later from pop art. The result are extremely vivid compositions characterized by a strong visual component. The artist wants to involve the viewer physically and psychologically to bring him into animated pictures from silent sound and from static movement. The artistic language of Veronique Raymond is mainly abstract and leaves no room for defined shapes or sharp edges. The expressive power is entirely entrusted to the strength of colors selected and combined with care and attention to details. Her works are delicate, well balanced, and pleasant to observe. The viewer is placed in front of reality without certainties, to which can give a very personal interpretation by projecting his own feelings in it. The palette predominantly involves the choice of pastel shades, sometimes combined with warmer tones, creating a relaxing and dynamic composition. Wang Bin is a Chinese artist who uses the watercolor technique, which, although typically European, has much in common with Chinese techniques of color application. His works reproduce landscapes that mostly impressed him, and they are made without the use of preparatory drawing. The final result is extremely delicate, free-flowing brush strokes on the canvas to capture the reality that escapes, stopping his impression on the support. From this point of view, his work resembles impressionist paintings, in which the world is made only with quick shots of brush. An emotional painting, therefore, delicate, a modern revival of an artistic, timeless technique. The artistic language of the Italian artist Virginia Fabri is mainly abstract and chooses to entrust the task to the colors to get in close communication with the viewer. The natural world is just mentioned and is made through the adoption of thick and defined strokes. Her works are characterized by essential features from bright but realistic colors, while juxtaposed with abstract forms and allowed to soak into a two-dimensional world, in some ways almost with a childlike rendition, in which the contours and certainties are abolished, leaving ample space for individual power of imagination. Guys, here we go. This is it. It was a pleasure for me to introduce you to this artist, and I hope to see you soon in the gallery in Milan if you want to see their works live. So, see you maybe? I'm Elena Quarantelli from M.A.D. Gallery Milan. Bye!